Hello and welcome to WEC Talk, the podcast series from the FIA World Endurance Championship. I'm Martin Haven. In episode 8 of the 2021 series, we meet two figures who'll undoubtedly play a major part in the 2022 GTE Pro battles. Later in the show, we'll catch up with a driver who began his career in stock cars and has ended up winning Le Mans, both in the real world and virtually, Nick Tandy. But first, a relatively new name to the WEC. Named as Chevrolet Sports Car Racing Program Manager at the beginning of the year, she will bring the C8R to a full program of racing in GTE Pro in 2022. Welcome to Laura Wontrop Klauser.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Well, it's so fantastic to have you on because it means that Corvette, and I think this is for the first time ever, is engaging in a full World Championship program next year, which is just a huge step for the fans, for the teams, and for the brand.
Yeah, it is our first time and we're excited. This is something that's been a long time coming, but it's the right timing. Just looking at our production Corvette right now with the C8 and its global presence and the launches we're doing around the world, as well as we're looking to the future of racing and our two exciting global platforms that are coming in sports car, our Cadillac LMDH and our Corvette GT3. It was time to finally get in and give a full WEC season a go and start building our fan base and reaching out to the ones we already have.
Well, because of Le Mans and Corvette's near constant presence over the last couple of decades, of course, everybody's aware of the team and aware of the cars, but we've always wanted a little bit more. And that's great because Corvette has got such a history and such a brand loyalty. It's great to see it being rolled out as the road car program gets rolled out across the globe.
Yeah, we love our trips over to Le Mans, and we've been enjoying the other WEC races we've had the opportunity to participate in. And it was time to, really get in there and go to places we've never taken Corvette racing. We've never taken it to Japan or to the Middle East. And it's something that we've been wanting to do and found that, like I said, it was finally the right time to be able to do that, to build off of our fan base that we've created with our Le Mans presence and really take that to the next step in the global environment.
Well, I said at the beginning of the year you were appointed to this new role, so you've now had a full season overseeing Corvette racing, and that's a full-time job. But your brief also covers Cadillac DPI and the Camaro GT4 programs in the Imsa WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. So 24 hours a day isn't enough, surely, to get all that lot done.
Oh, no, it's not. In fact, if I could figure out how to turn 24 into 36 or even 28, just a couple more a day would be helpful. It's been a very, very busy year. There's been a lot going on in GM Motorsports competition in general. We're creating a new tech center where we're going to have a lot more of our racing expertise brought in-house, which is really exciting. But the growth that we have in just the sports car space alone is awesome. We have fantastic support from our leadership and the opportunity to showcase both brands, Cadillac and Chevrolet, in different, sports car racing throughout the globe. This is the time to be in sports car racing, especially at General Motors. But even in general, just the class growth that we're going to see with LMDH and the exciting news of moving to GT3, again, with the potential for that many more OEs to be involved. This is an awesome time to be in racing.
I think everybody has the feeling that we're kind of about to go headlong into a golden era, as you say, not just with the prototypes, but with the change to the GT format. There are so many manufacturers who are very keen to have customer racing programs in GT3. So that can only be good. More teams, more cars, more variety. It's fantastic. And clearly there's a passion there. So where did this all start for you? Were you a petrol head as a kid? Did your dad take you racing? Your folks, your family? How did that all start for you?
It's funny. I grew up in just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, in a town closer called Towson, but really in farmland area. And racing, when I grew up, when we were talking about races, it usually meant horse racing.
All right.
So it's funny that I've been able to find my way here, but I always loved cars. At the age of 13, I told my mom and dad, I'm going to move to Detroit. I'm going to work for one of the big three in the US, that being Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler at the time. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of the automotive industry. I love the concept of the freedom that your license and your car got you, and how the car was one of the most complicated things you would own, and how it has such an important part in all of our stories, and how, our world has evolved, and all of that. So when I made that decision and I started looking at colleges, I went in for mechanical engineering. And the first thing that caught my attention when I started college visiting was the Formula SAE program that is run by Society of Automotive Engineers. The idea that as a college student, I could be a part of a team that designed, built, and raced a car, that was so exciting to me. And I ended up changing my college search criteria based off of which schools had the FSAE program and which one would be willing to let me get involved, not having too much background of my own. Ended up going to RPI, which met all that criteria, and fell in love with the program. That was my best experience in college, was being on the team, the friends I made, the things I learned, and being a part of that. And really, I think that's where racing got into my brain, and I really enjoyed the competitive side of it. Did my first 8 years with GM on the production side. Loved getting to know our process, how we put out thousands of cars each day, and how we continuously make our product better. And then had an opportunity to come over to racing and jumped on it, of course, and haven't looked back.
And racing brings an immediacy, and that must have been very rewarding as well when you were learning in college. You can think something, you can go and make it, and you can go and test it immediately. But then there's a definite gear change when you go into the production of any car model. It's a much longer and more drawn out process. Did you find that to be a very different discipline from anything you'd expected?
Oh, yes. In fact, one of the things when you're talking to new hires, especially, we bring a lot of people in from the Formula SAE program. It's a key hiring criteria at GM. You remind them that the pace is different when you come off of college and what you're used to in that program. And then when you come into real life, and that it's not everybody's going to be working 20-hour days, staying up all night, getting that race car done like we remember in the shop. It's a little bit of a different thing. And it's important because you're going to burn yourself out if you try to sustain that for the next 30 years of your life, or however long you're going to be working. But one of the things I loved when I got back into racing on the professional side was picking up the pace again. I love the immediate response. You make a decision, you find out if it was the right one really quickly. And it would be very hard for me to turn around and go back again and have to slow it down. I like this fast-paced environment, and it motivates me and energizes me.
We'll talk about that in 2 decades when you're ready for the slightly slower pace of life. Because production engineering will always be there, and you'll always be fully qualified for it. But you're right. I mean, coming back to racing, and stepping things up, you started in Pirelli World Challenge with the Cadillac program, with the ATS VR. And then suddenly things just kind of exploded for Caddy, didn't they? Was that originally expected to be a toe in the water, or did things just transpire that Cadillac would suddenly explode into Daytona prototypes and then onto DPI?
I think it was a happy coincidence. I'll never truly know what those, in the above me in the hierarchy of GM had in store, or how much planning was done. But when I took the position with Cadillac, that was the position I applied for, and was happy to be over there with the ATS, learned a lot, loved working with that team. They were great. But then when the opportunity to transition over with the DPI program, and for Cadillac to get back into endurance racing, and really, the Imsa endurance racing in the US is the pinnacle for endurance racing for us, for sure. That was an exciting opportunity. It was also very different. Went from a singular team that was racing to having multiple teams in more of a customer style program. And it really challenged my skill set on how to work with others and how to get everyone to function together as a family, even though they were competing against each other. So I have been really grateful for every step along and what I've picked up along the way, because it's definitely helped as we look to the future for what we're doing in sports car, where we're going to have both a huge factory style program in addition to a huge customer program coming up. So each thing has been really useful.
And when you've got a big sandbox, it does help if everybody plays nice. But that's, as you say, when it's super competitive like motorsport, that's really tough.
It is. And I don't think there's anyone that can make it perfect. A lot of it is balancing expectations, and it's asking people to look beyond their own personal agendas or their team's agendas. And it's tough. Times where I've gotten into disagreements with some of our teams, if I were standing in their shoes, I would completely be doing the same thing that they're doing or want to be doing, because I understand where they're coming from. So it's always a balance, and sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't, but you just try and learn from each one and keep going forward.
Exactly right. So looking briefly then, just a year or two into the future of the crystal ball, hypercar coming along, Cadillac's going to be involved. What about a World Endurance Championship program? What about the Imsa WeatherTech Sports Car Series? Where's that balance going to be? How much full factory input is there going to be? And what about customer teams? Who and how many? And are those all questions that are yet to be answered?
Those are the hot questions that we are definitely working on. We were excited that when we put out the announcement for GT3, we were able to include on our website, Chevrolet.com/motorsport, there's a GT3 page, and there is a place where you can go in and submit, we're calling it a hand raiser form, if you're interested in racing the GT3 and would like to, be on our list to be considered. We are just receiving the first round of that. We had a lot of interest, which is fantastic. So now we need to sift through and understand how much of that is I'm ready now versus this is something I would like to do, but it's not, not ready to lay down a deposit check, all of those things. So we're trying to understand what our influence is going to look like. And then also we're going to be taking this at a very controlled pace. We want to make sure that we don't sign ourselves up for too much in year one and not be able to properly support the people that are racing our cars. It's really important to us that we deliver on the whole package, not only a fantastic race car, but a really strong support system so that, being able to get parts or being able to call in and get some help on something is something that all of our customers have access to. So we're probably going to be very carefully controlling our volume for the first couple of years just to make sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew.
The GTE program in WEC, that's obviously going to be a standard bearer for Corvette globally, but is that also part of ramping up the size of the team, because you're obviously going to need more bodies to do WEC and IMSA and build the cars as well as run them, and that's going to serve you in good stead as you then start to look at rolling out a customer GT3 program?
We are going to need a lot of people to execute all this. You hit the nail on the head. And it's great to have the opportunity in 2022 to test the waters a little bit with what is it like to race, one of the cars in the WEC, to race one in IMSA, to have two at big races, to do that. And I think that 2022 is giving us an opportunity with a car that we know very well and we've been racing for the past 2 years, and to work on the parts we don't know, like how do we do this? So it keeps the number of variables down versus having a brand new car with all, it just helps us kind of take things step by step.
Well, the logistics of racing in IMSA, I mean, everybody goes, oh yeah, it's all in America, of course. Yes, but that's like saying, yes, it's all in Russia. It's quite a large place. So you're already used to long haul logistics. But once you start looking at sea freight and air freight and so on, then a global championship has a whole different set of lead times. And again, your production engineering sort of long lead time know-how is probably not going to be a bad thing to have there either.
Logistics is by far the toughest part. To go from, Michigan to California or down to Florida, it's long, but it all can be done on a truck. We can load the cars, we can send them out, and we just got to make sure we give the truck driver enough days to get the car and all the supplies there. As soon as you put a giant body of water that you have to figure out how to either fly over or take a ship, to bring everything to, that just complicates things a ton. And then right now, understanding what is the proper lead time for shipping. We've heard so many horror stories of things getting trapped in ports and all sorts of different things going on with the pandemic impact on everything, that it is something that we're definitely leaning heavily on the WEC resources to help us as we figure this out.
What about the future of Corvette as a factory team? When you introduce the GT3 program, that is customer-based racing. So will the factory emphasis then be, say, like, I was going to say like Porsche, but of course in GTE you can run a factory program, but they also run a massive customer program. Will the factory impetus then be on LMDH and in the hypercar program?
We really like the connection that we have with the factory style program with Corvette today. We like that we have a steady team, that we know we have, liveries on the car that was created by our design staff at Chevrolet. We have that connection with the drivers that we've chosen, and a lot of our fans really enjoy being a part of the Corvette Nation side of things when it comes for racing. So that's something we value, and it's something that we would like to carry forward. We're still waiting on understanding exactly what the class structure is going to look like, especially in 24 with the WEC, or even in 23. I think we're waiting on some clarification there as well as watching how things progress in Imsa. They've given us the GTD Pro class, which is great, an opportunity to keep the pro drivers there and to run a pro team. So we are monitoring all of this carefully as we're figuring things out. But ideally, that's what we would like to keep a presence there, so that we always have that steady entrant that our fans can root for, and then hopefully grow the family with our customers to be able to have even more Corvettes out there that everyone's excited about.
Corvette's got such a great history of racing and such a great fan base, as you say, and globally as well. Anybody who's ever been to Le Mans and just felt the ground shake as the Corvettes have thundered by will be an instant fan again for seeing the cars back. So it's a great step and opens up a whole lot of opportunities. And it's been way too long since there were Cadillacs at Le Mans. I mean, way too long. So that can't come soon enough either.
Yeah, we're excited. I've gotten the privilege to learn quite a bit about some of our racing history on the Cadillac side. When you get a title Cadillac Racing Program Manager, it's assumed that you're just supposed to know that. So I had to do some studying up. And I love the story about the Le Monster that came over in 1950. And then, of course, when we had the LMP1 Cadillacs racing in the early 2000s, there's a lot of history there. And there's also a lot of opportunity to come back and really show the world that we can do this. So a lot of pressure, but we're up for the challenge.
So, Laura, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to welcoming you into the WEC family and bringing back the thunder with Corvette Racing.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to be in the paddock and to get to know everyone and to learn all of the new tracks. 2022 is going to be awesome.
Next, I'm delighted to invite a former mini racer to WEC Talk. Okay, he's moved on a little since mini stocks, but it's always good to chat to Le Mans winner Nick Tandy.
Hello, Martin.
Hello, how are you?
Good to talk to you again, yeah.
And back home in Bedford after a long season, I guess, racing in the Imsa WeatherTech Sports Car Series in the States.
Yes, indeed. We haven't actually stopped yet. I'm back off to the States next week, I think, to get back on the simulator and start preparing for next year already. So we finished, Petit in, what was it, mid-November. And the team's got to be ready early January to start at Daytona and get all our kit and get everything ready to start the WEC season in Sebring, of course.
The old adage of preparation for Le Mans begins on the Monday after Le Mans is never truer, is it? I mean, it is a 365-day business now, motor racing.
It is, yeah, it really is. We never stop. Once each event's finished, you'll perhaps get the Monday off, but then it's straight back into reviewing exactly what happened and how you can make things better for the next race and the next year. And yeah, when regulations change and we go into entering different championships and bits like this, then there's always a lot to do. I think that probably the drivers get it quite easy. We get to do our reports from home, but yeah, the guys that are working on the cars and developing the stuff and developing the softwares and things like this, they're flat out all year round, of course.
And there's been an awful lot of changes recently at Corvette Racing as well. I first met the team in '99 when they started an American Le Mans series, and guys like Doug Feehan and Danny Binks and a number of the drivers have moved on as well. So it's hardly a surprise after almost a quarter of a century in running that team that a lot of people have sort of progressed up the ladder or gone off to retirement. So has it felt a little bit this year as though there's sort of a fresh new feeling to the team?
Well, for me, it has been, because obviously coming in fresh, I've obviously seen Corvette racing in and around the paddocks on the racetrack for a lot of years and raced against them and, a lot of time been beaten by them. So hence why, I thought it'd perhaps be a good idea to join them. I was first in contact with Doug a few years back, just having a chat, and the Corvette racing program it's got such history, even though it's only been going a little over 20 years, but the success that they've had, it's just unbelievable. And I'm sure there's still people there that have been there from the start. I've been lucky enough to witness just how good the level of people within the team is. It's in motorsport, it is really about the team of people and how everybody works together and how they gel and get a car to work and get people and drivers to work with each other that leads on to success. And you can see why this team has been so successful. So yeah, there's been a bit of change recently, but hopefully it's the start of the next story of success of Corvette racing.
And you talked about coming new to the team, and it's not just new to the team. I mean, it is a whole different ball game. Obviously, you've been racing in the States, but pretty much, well, for a dozen years and more, you've been predominantly racing Porsches. Now, I'm assuming, although the C8R is now a mid-engine car like the Porsche is, there's an awful lot of difference between what you were used to and what you've been racing this year. How much does that take for a driver to get his head around?
The biggest challenge is it's always integrating yourself into a new team, a new set of people, a new environment. Actually kind of driving the cars, they are different, of course, but an experienced driver, I mean, I've had times even back at Porsche when I was jumping between very different types of car week in, week out, and you develop skills that kind of allow you to do that. The last iteration of the Porsche I drove was, let's say, mid-engined. Similarly with the C8R, they have a similar sort of grip, similar sort of aero level, similar sort of weight, of course, by the regulations, similar tires. So kind of driving the car was the most natural thing for me when I came to the team. It's how you can then integrate yourself into this team of people and figure out what your job is, because of course as a driver, it's not just about what you see when we're out in the car and track. It's all the stuff that goes behind the scenes, working with the engineers, working with the mechanics to make sure that everything is as you need it and the car is as good as possible. So it's figuring out kind of everything, that side of it, which takes the time, and developing those relationships and the kind of the language and the understanding that needs to be given from your side coming into a new environment.
You kind of forget about that until you think about going to a new job in a new office where you don't know where anything is, what anybody's name is. I mean, you sort of start to recognize faces after a few days, but then you've forgotten what their name was when you were first introduced and all of that. And that's, in something as immediate as motor racing, actually that's a really important part of a driver's ability to assimilate himself into the team. And you've had to do that on a number of occasions. Obviously, you started off racing Porsche Super Cup, Carrera, Cup Deutschland, and so on with Franz Conrad. And that must have been a good place to start, because Conrad always was a really tight family team. Do you get that sort of familiarity when you're with Corvette as well?
Yes. Yeah. It's very different coming from, a Carrera Cup team that might have 10 or so people working to, a full fat GTE, GTLM spec team, factory team that's got maybe 40 people on site. So, but I do think my time, when I went over to Germany and put myself in a strange environment, if you like, I think that was good for me, just to kind of figure out how to deal with yourself and how to put yourself into a team of strange people and with different languages. Because even though a lot of the Americans say that I'm the most American Englishman they've ever met, I still don't speak American, and a lot of them still don't speak English, I have to say. But we have this. Yeah, there's often a way to bond into a team, and it was pretty simple from day one. I think it's always difficult being the rival for a long time and the enemy, and then coming into a team. A lot of people and a lot of fans have said to me the same. We've spent years kind of cheering against you or hating you and for trying to beat our Corvettes, but now we appreciate the fact that you're here and everyone's doing the same job, that they're trying to win the race, and they're trying to win a race for Corvette. And when you look at it that way, and everyone knows that I'm there to try and do my best job possible and help everyone in the team to get results, then it soon all fell into place.
Go back a little bit. Tell us, how did you end up as a jobbing GT driver being approached to race the 919 hybrid? That seemed, when they announced, who would be driving the cars, okay, that's a big change. I mean, obviously in technical terms, an enormous change, but in the sheer amount that drivers had to do in those cars, it must have just been like night and day.
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, how it all came about was my goal from kind of when I got to F3 level was to become a professional race car driver, and that kind of happened after my 2 years in Carrera Cup. And then a year later, I was signed on to be a factory driver with Porsche, and kind of that was, it was the pinnacle of everything I'd ever dreamed about. Going to race all over the world and get to give up your day job and actually treat it as a proper job and have that kind of stability to. It was at that point, I managed to buy a house. That we had enough stability to start planning ahead, and now we've got two children in the house with us now as well. So it was a huge stage in my career to get to the point where I was a professional racing driver. But then, of course, you kind of see these races that are out there. It was always a big goal of mine to try and win one of these big races, a Le Mans, a Petit Le Mans, a Nürburgring. Yeah, and the first year I managed to win a big race at Petit Le Mans. And that was kind of when Porsche announced that they were doing the LMP1 car program. And yeah, I thought to myself that I could bring something to the program. So when I saw that some of the other guys within the team were getting a test, I spoke to Andreas Seidel, that was in charge of the LMP1 operation, and said, look, I've got some high downforce F3 experience behind me. I think, I've done a good job in the stuff that Porsche have put me in so far. I think I could do a good job in your team. And he said, okay, come and do a test. And we did. And it all kind of went from there. The test went really well. And off the back of that, then I was in the car for Le Mans, and that didn't turn out too badly.
It didn't, did it? And of all the, plan A, plan B and projections that the Porsche factory team must have had, the sort of jobbing, put together crew and a Grand Prix driver on his weekend off, you probably weren't maybe number one of who they thought might win Le Mans for them. So what was it like as it gradually became evident that actually it might well happen and you were going to be the guys who might well win it. What was,
Well,
I mean, between the three of you, because everybody thinks, oh, you're all racing together at Le Mans and you all obviously they're completely integrated, except you're in the race, like ships that pass in the night. You're almost never awake at the same time or in a garage at the same time. One's in, one's out, and the other one's asleep. So do you even have that awareness of each other until like the final hour or two?
24-hour races are always different. You only ever see one of your teammates at a time once the race starts, because obviously someone's obviously in the car and you see them in the pit stop and give them a tap on the helmet and say good job, and then you're out. You perhaps might not see them for another 4 hours. But I mean, I know we definitely weren't the favourites for that race, because a load of my friends put some money down on our car to win when it was at silly odds, and they made quite a bit of money out of it. So that was good. But I remember we were the third car, yes, but in Porsche's view, and I know this because I saw the preparation that went in and all the testing that went in, we were never the third car. We were an extra car, but we weren't the third car. Obviously, from the outside and from the level of experience and a point situation in the WEC Championship, the two main cars naturally had that experience advantage. But I remember it was midweek between the test day and the race, and we'd got an off day, and me and Earl and Nico I think we were sat in the hotel somewhere, and I remember saying to them, because I'd already won at Daytona in the 24 hours. I'd been at Le Mans a few times before, so I'd kind of got the experience that they hadn't, and I think they wanted to be competitive and they knew they'd be quick, but I don't think either of them really thought that we did have a chance. And I said to them, look, we've got the best car because we've set it up the best around with our engineers, how we want it. It could have been the best, it could have been the worst. We didn't know, but we thought it was set up the best way. I said, we've got three great drivers in the team. We've got a lot of the heads of departments as single engineers on our car that would normally be overseeing the full team, if you like, on a normal weekend. And we've got a great crew. We had the complete test crew as the pit crew. So I said, look, if the car is quick and we go round and round and, we are quicker than the Audis, I think we will be the best Porsche. And I think we've got a bloody good chance of winning this. And I think that probably put some confidence in them, to see how up for it I was. So when the race started, there was no real pressure to go flat out from the start. We knew that we'd be in the race and we'd be competitive, and so it turned out. The thing went round and round. We just put fuel and tires on it, and we were quick, and that's really, it's all the ingredients you need to be at the front and successful in the world's greatest motor race, isn't it?
And it's the perfect formula. Don't hit stuff. Don't spend time in the pits.
Yep, exactly.
And it's so easy to
and
say.
Go faster than the others.
Exactly. It's so hard to achieve. And when you're getting close, and you're getting very close, and you're in the final hour, and you're really, really then completely believing or terrified that it's all going to go completely pear-shaped. I mean, there must be the most enormous roller coaster of emotion.
It's absolute terror, because when like that year, for example, it was an unassailable position from a race point of view as such. It was only if something went wrong, and it happens all the time. If there's a big fight going on and there's two cars in the race. I remember when we won Daytona, for instance, the year before, and there was us in the 911 and there was one of the Corvettes, and it was pretty much a race between the two all night, ding dong, going into the morning. And I remember thinking, you don't wish harm on anyone, but I just remember thinking this would be so much less stress and so much easier if they just had a problem. And then about 4 hours from the end, they did. And it just took all the pressure off from that point of view. But then, of course, for the next bit, you're worrying what can happen to your car. So there's this massive elation and jubilation that comes at the end, but I think a lot of that is borne by the build-up of pressure, knowing that kind of builds, whether you're in a race for the win or whether you're trying to hang on to the win for the last 6 hours, and you've already done 18 or so, or 2 weeks before at the track and 5 months preparation. It's just a massive build-up of pressure that then gets released when that one car crosses the line and has victory at the end. I think that's why it's so emotional for everyone involved.
Well, you start exhausted, and I think that's what people don't really quite understand, that everybody is basically run ragged, and then there's a 24-hour race for which everybody stays up for 36 hours just to get to the end of it. So it's hardly surprising that win, lose or draw, the emotion is just boiling over. So standing there on that podium, obviously nobody wants to have only ever done that once.
It's a massive goal to stand on the top step. And, I do consider GTE, especially in the glory days when there was, lots of manufacturers and 17 cars out there and stuff. If you can win a Le Mans like that in a factory car against other factory teams, that's okay. It's not an overall win, but the achievement for the team and the people involved is just as big. So I was hoping to be there again this year. We didn't have the cleanest of runs on the 64 car at Le Mans this year, and it was a real shame because the car had really good pace. We just had a few kind of mechanical issues that knocked us back, and the contact from the start. But hopefully, we'll get another chance next year. It's been a few years since Corvette Racing have been on the top step at Le Mans, and that's not a normal situation either. So, yeah, we've got big aspirations. I've never won Le Mans in GT, of course. So that is a big goal. But the overall at Le Mans, I know because I've experienced it. It did change my life. It's a pretty nice feeling, Martin, and definitely something that I'd like to experience again in the future. But we never know what's going to be coming around the corner.
That's it for this episode of WEC Talk. My thanks to Laura Wontrop Klauser and to Nick Tandy for spending time with us. Until the next time, stay safe and thanks for listening.